You should check
It's
with your
true
office.
every day, and that's a disingenuous attack that
last?
misrepresents how much we care about our troops
How
and
long
what
will
they're
the
doing to
deployment
defend ICE agents. I'm not going to take the fact that we don't care about the troops. Nobody cares more about the troops at the top than this secretary and the
Mr.
chairman
Secretary,
and our
how long will
department.
the deployment last?
I don't know. You just read it yourself, and people can listen themselves, but it sounds like all three to me. If you've got millions of illegals
Think
and
the
you don't know where
president
they're
is
coming
unable
from,
to
they're
execute the
they're
laws of the
waving
United
flags
States?
from foreign
You just
countries
said-
and assaulting police officers
Said
and
the
law
president
enforcement
is
officers.
unable to
That's the
execute
problem.
the laws of the United States?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to America First, the channel that tells you the truth the mainstream media won't. Today we're diving deep into something that has me absolutely fired up. We just watched footage from a congressional hearing where our Secretary of Defense had to defend President Trump's decision to deploy the National Guard to Los Angeles to protect our ICE agents who are doing the job that needs to be done, removing illegal criminals from our streets. Before we get started, if you believe in putting America first, if you believe in law and order, and if you're tired of the left's constant attacks on our military and our border security, smash that like button right now. Hit subscribe and ring that notification bell because we're bringing you the content that matters every single day. And if you want to support this channel and help us keep bringing you the truth, head over to patreon.com/AmericaFirst and support us for as low as $5 a month. Your support keeps us independent and allows us to speak truth to power without fear. Now, let's talk about what we just witnessed in this hearing, because this is exactly what's wrong with our political system today. You have a Democrat congressman, presumably from California, attacking our military leadership for doing their job. This is the same California that has become a sanctuary state, harboring illegal immigrants and protecting criminals from federal law enforcement. And when President Trump finally steps in to restore order and protect our federal agents, what do the Democrats do? They attack our military.
Mr. Secretary, I want to express my severe concern with the deployment of the National Guard in Los Angeles without consultation of the state of California. There have been photographs that have shown these troops sleeping on the floor and have not been provided fuel, food, or water by DOD. How long will this deployment last, and why were we unprepared to provide them basic necessities such as food and water?
The commanders and troops on the field are very well prepared, sir. They responded incredibly rapidly to a deteriorating situation with equipment and capabilities. We have made sure from the top down, as a Secretary of Defense who's been in a unit holding riot shields outside the White House during the chaos of the summer of 2020, I know what it's like to be immediately deployed into a situation like that. There are moments where you make do as best you can temporarily, but we are ensuring they're housed, fed, water capabilities in real time from my office, because I care that much about the California Guard and the Marines and the men and women who are supporting our ICE agents on the ground.
You should check
It's
with your
true
office.
every day, and that's a disingenuous attack that misrepresents how much we care about our troops
How
and
long
what
will
they're
the
doing to
deployment
defend ICE agents. I'm not going to take the fact that we don't care about the troops. Nobody cares more about the troops at the top than this secretary and the
Mr.
chairman
Secretary,
and our
how long
department.
will the deployment last?
We stated very publicly that it's 60 days. Because we want to ensure that those rioters, looters, and thugs on the other side assaulting our police officers
What is the
know that we're not
estimated
going
cost?
anywhere.
What
We're
is the
here to
estimated-
maintain the peace on behalf of law enforcement
Secretary,
officers in Los Angeles,
appreciate
which
you
Gavin
answering the
Newsom
question.
won't do.
What is the estimated cost of the deployment for the Guard and the Marines to LA, and where's this funding coming from? Will it be coming from quality of life programs that affect our service members or our families? If you want to wait till I finish
Before
my
I hand it to-
question, such as updates, housing and barracks.
Before I hand it to Bryn, the insinuation that we're pulling money from housing and barracks in order to fund this is disingenuous and incorrect.
I'm just asking.
Bryn can give you the numbers, absolutely.
So the current estimated cost is $134 million, which is largely just TDY costs, travel, housing, food, et cetera.
Where's it coming from? That's the cost, but where's it coming from?
Out of their O&M accounts.
With the most recent deployment of the Marines, Mr. Secretary, what's the justification for using the military for civilian law enforcement purposes in LA? Why are you sending war fighters to cities to interact with civilians?
Every American citizen deserves to live in a community that's safe, and ICE agents need to be able to do their job. They're being attacked for doing their job, which is deporting illegal criminals. That should happen in any city, Minneapolis or Los Angeles. And if they're attacked, that's lawless, and President Trump believes in law and order. So he has every authority, and he has done mobilizing
President,
National Guard or active duty troops under U.S. code to
Yeah,
protect
let's talk about-
federal
let's talk about the
agents
US
in
code.
their job, which is
Let's talk
exactly
about
what
US
we're doing,
code.
and we're proud to
10
do
USC
it. We're
Mr.
proud to
Secretary,
do it.
10 USC of the U.S. Code 12406 as a legal basis that the president used cites 3 examples and circumstances for the Guard. Invasion by a foreign nation, rebellion or dangerous rebellion against the authority of the government of the United States, or the president is unable with regular forces to execute the laws of the United States. Which authority is triggered here to justify the use?
I don't know. You just read it yourself, and people can listen themselves, but it sounds like all 3 to me. If you've got millions of illegals
Think
and
the
you don't know where
president
they're
is
coming
unable
from,
to
they're
execute the laws of the
waving
United
flags
States?
from foreign
You just
countries
said-
and assaulting police officers
Said
and
the
law
president
enforcement
is
officers,
unable to
that's a
execute
problem.
the laws of the United States?
No,
That's-
the
that's
governor of
pretty dangerous.
California is unable
The
to
code
execute the
says-
laws of the
the
United
code says
States.
the president. You said
The
all 3
governor
apply.
of the California has failed to protect his people, along with the mayor of Los Angeles, and so President Trump has said he will protect our agents, and our Guard and Marines
The
are
law
proud to do
also
it.
says, Mr. Secretary, that the orders for these purposes shall be issued through governors of the states.
You and I both know that President Trump has all the authorities necessary, and thankfully he's willing to do it on behalf of the citizens of Los Angeles, on behalf of our ICE agents, and behalf of our country.
We've also pulled $1 billion for the border as well. So this just goes into the same fund, 134. What did
Congressman,
you
what's the-
indicate, 134 million? I was asking Ms. McDonald.
Okay.
134 million goes on top of the billion that's been pulled for the
So
border.
the funding that was pulled for this year was largely in FSRM, and in this budget, we're actually looking to plus that funding back up to backfill that for our troops and for their families.
Let's break down what really happened here, because the mainstream media is going to spin this as military overreach or Trump being authoritarian. That's complete nonsense. What we're seeing is a president who actually cares about law and order, who actually supports our law enforcement, and who isn't afraid to use the tools at his disposal to protect American citizens and federal agents doing their jobs. The congressman started by expressing severe concern about the National Guard deployment happening without California's consultation. Think about that for a moment. California, a state that has actively worked against federal immigration enforcement, a state that has declared itself a sanctuary for illegal immigrants, is complaining that they weren't consulted when federal forces were deployed to protect federal agents. This is rich. California has spent years thumbing their nose at federal immigration law, and now they want a say in how federal agents are protected while enforcing that same law they've been obstructing. The Secretary of Defense gave the perfect response. He pointed out that commanders and troops responded incredibly rapidly to a deteriorating situation. This is what real leadership looks like. When our federal agents are under attack, when they're being assaulted for simply doing their jobs, you don't wait for permission from a state government that has already proven they won't protect these agents. You act swiftly and decisively. The congressman then tried to make it seem like our troops weren't being taken care of, talking about photos showing troops sleeping on floors without food and water. The secretary shut this down immediately, and rightfully so. As someone who served and held riot shields outside the White House during the chaos of 2020, he knows exactly what these deployments look like. They're always temporary hardships when you deploy rapidly to address an emergency situation. The key word here is temporary. Our military is incredibly capable and adaptable, and suggesting that temporary inconveniences during rapid deployment somehow shows we don't care about our troops is absolutely ridiculous. What's particularly infuriating about this line of attack is that it's coming from the same political party that has consistently voted against military funding, against military pay raises, against improving military housing and facilities. Now, they want to pretend they care about troops sleeping on floors during an emergency deployment? Give me a break. This is pure political theater designed to undermine President Trump and our military leadership. The secretary made it crystal clear that they're ensuring troops are housed, fed, and provided with water and capabilities in real time. He's personally overseeing this because he cares about the California Guard and the Marines supporting our agents on the ground. This is what real leadership looks like. When politicians try to score cheap political points by attacking troop welfare, our military leaders step up and set the record straight. Then we get to the timeline question. The deployment is set for 60 days, and the secretary explained exactly why. They want to ensure that the rioters, looters, and thugs who are assaulting our police officers know that we're not going anywhere. We're there to maintain peace on behalf of law enforcement officers in Los Angeles, something Governor Gavin Newsom apparently won't do. This is the key point that everyone needs to understand. California's leadership has failed. They've created an environment where federal agents conducting lawful immigration enforcement are being attacked, where criminals feel emboldened to assault law enforcement officers. When state and local leadership fails to maintain law and order, it becomes a federal responsibility. That's exactly what President Trump is doing, and that's exactly what the Constitution allows. The cost question is where things get really interesting. The congressman tried to suggest that this $134 million deployment cost would come from quality of life programs for service members and their families. This is another disingenuous attack, and the secretary called it out immediately. The funding is coming from operations and maintenance accounts, which is exactly where it should come from. This is what these accounts are for: operational deployments and maintenance of our military readiness. But let's put this $134 million in perspective. This is a fraction of what we spend on foreign aid to countries that hate us. This is less than what California probably spends on services for illegal immigrants in a single month. We're talking about protecting federal agents who are trying to remove dangerous criminals from our communities, and Democrats are complaining about the cost? The cost of not protecting these agents, the cost of allowing criminals to remain in our communities, is far higher than $134 million. When the congressman asked about the justification for using military for civilian law enforcement, the secretary gave the perfect answer. Every American citizen deserves to live in a community that's safe. ICE agents need to be able to do their job. They're being attacked for doing their job, which is deporting illegal criminals. This should be happening in every city, whether it's Minneapolis or Los Angeles. When agents are attacked, that's lawlessness, and President Trump believes in law and order. This is the fundamental difference between the Trump administration and the previous administration, and between Republicans and Democrats generally. We believe in law and order. We believe that laws should be enforced equally and consistently. We believe that when federal agents are under attack, the federal government has not just the right, but the obligation to protect them. The legal authority being used here is 10 U.S.C. 12406, which allows for National Guard deployment in cases of invasion by a foreign nation, rebellion against government authority, or when the president is unable to execute U.S. laws with regular forces. The congressman read these criteria and then asked which one applied. The secretary's response was perfect. It sounds like all three. Think about this seriously. We have millions of people who entered our country illegally. Many of them are waving flags from foreign countries while attacking American law enforcement officers. If that's not an invasion, what is? When people are violently resisting the enforcement of U.S. immigration law, attacking federal agents, that's rebellion against government authority. And when the governor of California refuses to cooperate with federal immigration enforcement when they actively obstruct it, the president clearly cannot execute U.S. laws with regular forces alone. This is textbook application of federal authority in response to state government failure. California has failed to protect federal agents. California has failed to support federal law enforcement. California has created an environment where criminals feel safe attacking ICE agents. President Trump stepped in to fix what California's leadership refused to address. The congressman tried to argue that the law requires orders to go through state governors, but as the secretary pointed out, President Trump has all the authorities necessary, and thankfully he's willing to use them on behalf of Los Angeles citizens, ICE agents, and our country. This is exactly right. When state leadership fails, federal leadership must step in. What we're seeing here is a perfect example of why we need strong federal leadership that isn't afraid to act when states refuse to do their job. Immigration enforcement is a federal responsibility. Protecting federal agents is a federal responsibility. When states interfere with these responsibilities or refuse to support them, the federal government has every right and obligation to step in. The additional $1 billion mentioned for border security is exactly what we need. We should be spending whatever it takes to secure our border and enforce our immigration laws. The fact that Democrats are complaining about spending money to protect federal agents and secure our border, while they're perfectly happy to spend billions on foreign aid and welfare for illegal immigrants, tells you everything you need to know about their priorities. This entire hearing exchange perfectly illustrates the difference between America First policies and the globalist, open borders agenda of the radical left. On one side, you have President Trump and his administration doing whatever it takes to protect American citizens and enforce American laws. On the other side, you have Democrats more concerned about the feelings of illegal immigrants and the sovereignty of sanctuary states than they are about the safety of federal agents and American communities. The Secretary of Defense and his team handled this perfectly. They didn't back down, they didn't apologize for doing their jobs, and they made it clear that they will continue to support law enforcement and protect federal agents regardless of political pressure from the left. This is the kind of backbone we need in our leadership. What this hearing really shows is that the Trump administration is serious about immigration enforcement. They're not going to let sanctuary cities and states interfere with federal law. They're not going to let criminals attack ICE agents without consequences. They're going to use every tool at their disposal, including military deployment when necessary, to ensure that our laws are enforced and our agents are protected. This is exactly what the American people voted for. We voted for law and order. We voted for immigration enforcement. We voted for leaders who would stand up to sanctuary cities and force them to comply with federal law. President Trump is delivering on those promises, and the left is absolutely losing their minds about it. The fact that we even need to deploy military forces to protect ICE agents tells you everything you need to know about how bad things have gotten in places like Los Angeles. The local government has so thoroughly abandoned their responsibility to maintain law and order that federal intervention became necessary. This is what happens when you elect politicians who care more about protecting illegal immigrants than protecting law enforcement officers. Patriots, this is why your vote matters. This is why we need to continue supporting America First candidates at every level of government. When we elect weak leaders who refuse to enforce our laws, who create sanctuary policies that protect criminals, we end up needing federal intervention to restore basic law and order. California is a perfect example of what happens when leftist policies are allowed to run unchecked. The 60-day timeline for this deployment sends exactly the right message. We're not leaving until the job is done. We're not backing down because of political pressure. We're going to stay as long as necessary to ensure that federal agents can do their jobs safely and that criminals understand there are consequences for attacking law enforcement. This deployment also serves as a warning to other sanctuary jurisdictions. If you're going to obstruct federal immigration enforcement, if you're going to create environments where federal agents are attacked, the federal government will step in. President Trump has made it clear that he will use every authority at his disposal to enforce immigration law, regardless of local political resistance. The mainstream media is going to spin this story as authoritarianism or military overreach, but patriots know better. This is what real leadership looks like. This is what happens when you have a president who actually cares about law and order, who actually supports law enforcement, and who isn't afraid to take action when state and local governments fail in their basic responsibilities. Every American should support this deployment. Every American should want federal agents to be protected while they're doing their jobs. Every American should want criminals removed from our communities, regardless of their immigration status. The fact that Democrats are opposing this shows exactly where their priorities lie, and it's not with American citizens or law enforcement officers. As we wrap up today's video, remember that this is just the beginning. President Trump has made it clear that immigration enforcement is a top priority, and he's willing to use every tool available to make sure our laws are enforced. We're going to see more deployments like this, more federal intervention in sanctuary jurisdictions, and more accountability for state and local governments that refuse to cooperate with federal law enforcement. This is what America First looks like in action. This is what happens when we elect leaders who actually care about American sovereignty and the rule of law. Democrats can complain all they want, but the American people are behind President Trump on this issue. We want our laws enforced, we want our communities safe, and we want our federal agents protected while they do their jobs. If you support President Trump's immigration enforcement efforts, if you support protecting ICE agents, and if you believe in law and order, make sure you hit that like button and share this video. The mainstream media won't tell this story honestly, so it's up to us to get the truth out there. Subscribe to America First for more content like this, and don't forget to support us on Patreon at patreon.com/AmericaFirst. Your support helps us continue bringing you the analysis and commentary the establishment media won't provide. Thanks for watching, Patriots, and remember, America first, always.